Hello everyone and welcome back to the Crafty Yellow Camper. Today we're going to be making a card using the Art Gallery stamp set, which is one of the new stamp sets in the spring and summer seasonal catalogue. It does have a set of dies that go with it that cut out some of the images, but I'll talk to you a bit more about those in a second. So here in the UK, Mother's Day is on the 14th of March. Which is not that long away. So what I thought was I would make this card as a Mother's Day card. Okay, it's a fancy fold, it's a pop-up V card, and I've adapted my instructions from an American demonstrator, Lisa Curcio, I think is how you say it. I apologise if I've murdered that name, but I think that's how you say it. And then I took part in a challenge on a group that I belong to, inspired by her cards. And this is my interpretation of how to do it. Okay, so thank you, Lisa, for your original instruction. And to be fair, all I've done is turned it into sort of UK measurements because she's an American demonstrator. So I'm going to put that card to one side for a minute and the bits and pieces that we've got to go with it. So what you need to do to start with is to cut an A4 sheet into two halves. So you cut it at 14.8 centimetres if you're here in the UK. I'm not quite sure what that would be in America, but I'm sure if you're an American demonstrator, you know what size that is. So basically half of an A4. So that gives you, or whatever your equivalent is, that gives you two C6 card bases. And we're going to need both bases to make the one card. So we're going to start work on the internal part of the card to start with, and that other card base is going to be for the outside. So what we need to do is we need to measure in from the crease. I'm using quite a fine pencil. I'm going to be quite careful with the pencil markings so I know that I can rub them out afterwards. And we're going to measure in 6 centimetres from the edge. And I'm just going to put a little dot there, okay, and then we're going to turn the card and we're going to measure down the crease. So this is the spine, if you like, if this was a book. We're going to measure down the crease 8.5 centimetres. Excuse me, 8.5 centimetres. Okay, are you like me, terrified to cough in a shop in case somebody thinks you've got COVID? Obviously I haven't, I wouldn't be doing this. So we've just made a little dot, and then what we're going to do is I am just going to very faintly draw a pencil line. Now you don't need to do this step. I'm doing, if you don't want to, I'm doing this so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to bring in my trimmer. Okay, now we want to remove the dark blade out of the way. The good thing about the Stampin' Up trimmer is there's room for each blade to be out of the way at each end, and we want this light grey one. And I'm just going to lift up the rail that they slide along, and I'm going to pop my card in, and I'm going to line that pencil mark up with the track on the trimmer. Okay, I'll hold that in place, bring this down, and I am going to score. Now you will need to run up and down several times. You're not trying to actually make a hole in your cardstock, but we just need to make sure that that score line goes through to the other side. So there's our piece where I drew the pencil, and that's the back of the card. So I'm just going to move my trimmer out of the way for a second. Oh, goodness me. Why is it when you've got a piece of ribbon on something you can never grab it properly to hook it back up? Okay. If I put it on the floor, I know what's going to happen. I'll kick it and it'll skid over and make a horrendous racket. Right, so I'm just going to bring in a soft rubber here, or an eraser if you prefer the proper term for it. My dad always tells me off for calling it a rubber and tells me, Julia, it's an eraser. Okay, so I just want to get rid of that pencil line. You're not going to see this part of the card, but just to make things a bit easier. Okay, so what we now need to do is we need to create the pop-up, and that's why we've scored here. You can see now I've rubbed it out, you can't really see the score mark. If I open that card out, what we want is we want that to come forward. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is take my bone folder and I'm going to fold that flap over and just give that a burnish. And then I'm going to turn the card over and do the same thing the other way, and hopefully that should make it easier for us to pop it out. Okay, so what we now want to do, this is the only fiddly bit, if you open the card out flat, put your hand on the bottom end of it, or the right hand side of it, and you should be able to put your fingers underneath and bring that fold forward that we've just made. Close up your card and make sure it's still nice and level, and then come back in with your bone folder or whatever tool it is you use to burnish. Okay, and then we've got our pop-up here. Okay, there. So now what we're going to do is we are going to stick that to the outside card. Now this is the important bit where this needs to be level, so you need to have made sure that your cutting was fairly accurate. You can trim it a little bit if you need to, but we need to remember not to put any adhesive behind this bit here, and we want to line up our edges. And I'm just going to just double check that mine is level. Yes, it is. Okay, I'm just holding this, it isn't stuck. So we will get that sort of funnel shape. When we close the card, it will go in and then it will pop out when we open it again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of wet glue. I'm going to do it on the outside card. I'm using wet glue because it makes it a little bit easier to wiggle it about a bit. That one's nearly empty. Pick up this one. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of wet glue, and remember we don't want any adhesive in the middle here because otherwise you are going to be in trouble. So I'm just going down the outside at the moment. Okay, now I'm going to bring my inside in and line that up. Okay, and you can see the wet glue just gives us a little bit of wiggle room. Okay, now I'm going to fold that card over there, give that a press, and then we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So again, remember we don't want adhesive in the middle here, so for now I'm just going to go down this edge and across the bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to open my card out and line it up. Okay, now this is where you need to be fairly quick. Okay, so we've obviously got this bit here that's not stuck. We can now see where we need a little bit of glue. So I'm just going to go into that corner and press that section down there. And then I'm going to come back to the side that we started on. You can see it's stuck there, and I'm just going to hold the card up and put a little bit of adhesive under there, and then just make sure that it still opens, which it does. Okay, so that's our actual card mechanism made. So the edges are lined up and we've got no glue here where the folding element needs to go. Okay, right. Okay, now at this point you have a decision to make. You can either make your card in portrait, so that when the recipient opens it, the pop-up is at the top, or you can turn your card over and make it in landscape, so that when the person opens it, the pop-up is either there or there. Okay, now for this card, I want to make this card for my mum for Mother's Day, so I am going to make it in landscape, and we're going to have our pop-up, I think, yeah, on the right hand side. Yeah, doesn't really make too much difference. So with that in mind, obviously make sure that you put any decoration on the front the right way round. Now what I've done on this card is I have made a one sheet wonder, so that is an A4 sheet of Whisper White, and I've stamped all over it with these two images. Now the beauty of this set is a two-step stamping set. So you get the bolder image and then the detail image. So you always stamp the bolder image in the lighter colour, and then you stamp the detail on it in the darker colour. And I've used this flower here, and I've gone over my cardstock, and I have also used this. And that is in shades of Pretty Flamingo, and that I've then used some Blushing Bride. So for the pinks, they're Blushing Bride with Flirty Flamingo on top. Sorry, not Pretty Flamingo. And then the purple, that is Highland Heather with some Purple Posy. Okay, and then I've just brought some leaves in from another set just to add a little bit of leaf detail, because there isn't really any leaf detail in this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick that to the front of my card. You'll have to excuse me, I'm struggling with my right arm at the minute. And even though I'm left-handed, you don't realise how much you use your arm until it hurts. Okay, I'm just going to open that card out and I'm going to attach that. So remember, I'm going for a landscape card, not a portrait one. Okay, if I was going for portrait, I'd have that up the other way. Okay, so there we go. So we've still got our mechanism. We've got our outside. Now, I've also die cut from Highland Heather, oh no, Purple Posy, a stitched oval, and then a smaller stitched oval in Whisper White, and I have stamped that with the top of this flower. Okay, so I'm just going to stick those two together. A little bit of wet glue makes it easier lining things up. Okay, just get that centered. Okay, and then the die that I wanted to talk to you about or the dies that go with this, there are dies that cut out these images and the leaves, and then there is this die, and it says, obviously you're reading it backwards, it says just want to say. Now it's one die, but it cuts the words out separately. So these are the words. So you are not restricted on having to use that shape, which is quite big and would take up quite a lot of your card front, as you can see. You're not restricted to that. You can use some of the words, you can use all of the words, you can put them in order, so you can put just want to say, like that. You could have them right across the top of the card, just want to say, like that. You could take some of the words out. You could have just to say if you wanted to. Anyway, so there are multiple permutations with those. Now, what I want to do is I want to mount this on the front. So I'm going to come in with some dimensionals. Now, when your sheets of dimensionals get down to just the edges, don't throw them away. Just take a pair of silicone scissors and snip the edges. And then you can use them like that. Need another one from over this side. You can also, you can cut these bits individually, or you can cut them down into halves if you've run out of mini glue dots. So I am going to take the backs off the foam pads on the dimensionals. Okay, and we decided to go that way, didn't we? So I'm going to position that in the middle there, which then denotes the direction of the card, if you like. So we know it's going to open like that, okay? And then I've got my just want to say words here. Okay, now this, as it happens this time, I do want to use all of them. So I'm just flicking the pieces out, okay? But it's just going to depend where we put them. So I'm turning them over. Okay, now you could mount these with dimensionals if you wanted to. I am just going to use some wet glue, so just the tiniest amount of wet glue, because you obviously don't want it to come out and go all over your card front. You could use a fine tip glue pen if you found that easier. And I'm going for the joins and just a little tiny bit on the tops of those letters. Okay, so this is the word just, and this is going to go up here. Slide that down a little bit, I think, otherwise it's not going to open properly. Don't worry if you get some, I've got a little bit of glue on there where the word dropped down out of my hand, but I will get a glue rubber on that when it's dry. Don't ever try and get glue off when it's wet with a glue rubber. Okay, and we're just gonna, I probably should have been using the fine tip glue pen, but there you go. Okay, so we've got some glue on the want. So we're going to go there with that one. Oh, no, we're not, because that is going to... I've got glue on my fingers and that doesn't want to go where I want it to go. Just want, and then we need to say. So... Do you know what? I'm not happy with that. So if I can get that off without ruining the paper, just going to gently pull that off because I'm not happy with that. We're going to go across here, I think. And I'll pop a dimensional piece, a tiny piece of dimensional under there later. As I said, don't worry about the fact that I've got wet glue up there. That will dry and then I can get that off with the glue rubber. Just want to... That's better. Prefer that. Just want to say... Okay. Got our word say. Just want to say... I've got that. Now, I'm going to have to be very careful because I've got wet glue on there and I can't do anything about it until it's dry. So, as I said before, we can use up the edges of these and you can see there's a tiny little edge there and that will just be enough, if I'm careful, to pop onto the back of that W to take up the slack where we've raised the centre up. There we go. That's that in place. Just want to say... Okay, as I said, I will leave that to dry. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in some scrap white. And I will show you how those flowers work. You will have to bear with me for a little bit of die cutting today. I usually have everything ready, but I wanted to show you how these work. So we're going to bring in the same colours that we used for the front of the card. So we've got some Flirty Flamingo and some Blushing Bride for the pinks. And then we had some Highland Heather and some Purple Posy for the purples. Okay, I'm just going to mount up these flowers quickly. Again, I usually do this all beforehand, but I wanted you to see how easy these stamps were to use. Right, okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let's move that out of the way. We're done with that for the minute. Okay, so first of all, we're going to do a pink one. So if you remember, I said light colour first and then dark colour after that. So this is the base stamp. So I'm just gonna have to ink that up. Although, as I said before, although I'm left-handed, I usually stamp with my right hand, so it's given me a bit of jip today. Okay, we're going to press that down. If you've got a really hard surface, put a stamp mat underneath. So that's the light bit there. Can't really see that very well. Hopefully you can see that there. And then we're going to bring in this stamp, which is the detail. And that's going to be our darker pink. And all we've got to do is line it up. So if you line up the bottom and roughly eyeball the top, you can't really go wrong. Okay, so we're going to put our... There we go, there's our darker colour over the top. So that's our pink flower. So we're just going to get rid of those pink inks, just for the purposes of the video. And then we're going to clean those off. Always remember to clean off if you're changing colour and using the same stamp, because you don't want to end up contaminating your stamp. Okay, so this is Purple Posy, so we're going to bring that one in, and this is our base one, and then we're going to bring in some Highland Heather for our detail. Okay, and you'll see that really does make this two-layer effect, does make these stamps really pop. Okay, there we go, so that's our Highland Heather. Okay, so you can see there we've got that really nice sort of almost watercolour effect. Okay, and then I just want to show you the other sort of bouquet, if you will. So I'm going to bring back in my chamois. Don't be concerned about the state of my chamois. It does still clean the ink off. And it will get a good rinse. I've been filming quite a few videos today. So we're going to remove those off there. Oh, I brought the stamps back in, didn't I? Okay. Just going to pop those back on there. The only trouble with photopolymer stamps I find is if you put them down, they get stuck to the back of things and then you don't actually know what you've done with them. Okay, and I am going to bring in this sort of little bouquet. Mount that up on there. And then it's got a couple of little, or a little bit to go over the top. So we'll stick that on there. So I'm just going to grab another piece of Whisper White cardstock. Please pardon me, I haven't been overly organised today, have I? Okay, so it's another piece of Whisper White cardstock. There's only ever a whole sheet when you want a tiny bit, isn't there? Right, so we're going to do this bouquet. So I'm going to stamp this in the purple posy first, like that. Okay, close that up. And then just going to bring in this little stamp with this little tiny one with our Highland Heather. And I'm just going to go over the tops. Oh, you can see I've caught it with the edge of the ink pad there, so don't press too heavy. I'm just going to go over the tops of the flowers, and you can just see that that's then just added that 3D detail to those. Right, I'm just going to grab the dies. So these are the Floral Gallery dies that coordinate with the Art Gallery stamp set. And that is the die to cut that one out. And that is the die to cut these out. So I will just cut that out of the sheet so it's out of the way. Okay, that's that out of the way. I'm just going to jump over to my cutting and embossing machine. If any of you are thinking of investing in a new machine, I had the original Stampin' Up Big Shot, which unfortunately died through overuse, I think, to be perfectly honest, because it's been used in my classes and all sorts of things as well. So I've just this month invested in our new machine, which is a bit more portable, even the big one. There are two sizes of machine. There is a mini and there is a full-size machine. The mini is great if most of the stamps and dies that you use are small, and it's very portable because both sides fold up, so it takes up an awful lot less room than the Big Shot used to on my desk, and I can put it away out of the way quite nicely when I'm not using it. Just got to go run through again with the pink flower that we made. Okay, so I'm just lining the die up. Really nice and easy to use. Big dies still fit through it. That was my concern, because I do have a lot of big dies, and although Stampin' Up don't sell big dies anymore, I do still have a lot of big dies. Okay, so here are our flowers. So there's our pink and our purple one, and here's our little floral bouquet. Now, if you really wanted to, you could go over with a green marker and just colour in that stem, but on our card today you're not really going to see it, so I'm not worried too much about that. Now, if you wanted to make a matte layer for this V, which I'm going to do today, if you were doing it in designer series paper, you'd probably have to cut 2 squares to get them both facing the right way, depending on the pattern, if you've got an abstract pattern. But what I'm going to do is to show you how to work out how big to do your square. So obviously we need 2 triangles, one for each side. So our triangle, if you remember, was 8.5 by 6. Okay, now we don't want a layer that completely covers that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece that is 8 centimetres first. So 0.5 centimetre off one way. And then I'm going to cut the other piece at 5.5 because it was 8.5 by 6. Okay, now that gives us a rectangle, not a square. And we need to cut that on the diagonal. So if you line up the points with the track on your trimmer and cut that up there, then you can see that we have got one triangle that will fit on that side quite nicely, and the other triangle that will fit. Oh, get it the right way around, Julia. Excuse me, I'm going a bit dim. It's been a long day. There, like that. Now, if you're using design and series paper, as I said, you probably will need to cut 2. And the one thing I'm going to point out to you is that we've got a little bit of an edge here where the trimmer has cut. But what you can do, a little trick for you, is to bring in your bone folder and just run that along the edge, and that will miraculously disappear. Okay, so I'm going to add some glue to these pieces. Again, I'm using wet glue because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm just going to add some glue. Actually, I'm going to add some glue to, to both pieces. But we'll do one at a time to make sure we get it the right way around. Okay, so I'm opening up the card flat, and then I'm just going to put this one on this side. So remember, the general rule of thumb, if you want to cut a matte layer, is to cut 0.5 centimetre off whatever your dimensions are, and that will give you a nice even gap around the edge. Okay, so this is why I didn't add the glue to this one, to make sure we get it the right way up, which we have. Okay, and then just line the points of your triangle up with the other side and make sure that it is level, because it will look a bit odd if it isn't. Okay, so that's that. So that's our white layer on our card. Okay, so those flowers we cut, we're going to bring those in now. So remember, our card is landscape and it's going to open like that, okay? So we need to adhere our flowers onto this side. Now what you also need to do is make sure that they don't stick over the top of this fold, because otherwise when you fold it up, it will screw your flower up. So for instance, if I was to stick that flower there, that will go down flat like that when we fold the card. So just be aware of where you also need to add your glue. So I'm only going to put a little bit of adhesive on this stalk and this leaf, and that will fold flat. Okay. So, because we want it to pop up, obviously, not be squished when it's opened. Okay, so I'm opening up my card flat, and I'm just going to pop that on there. You also need to make sure that it isn't sticking out of the side of your card, because otherwise you won't get it in the envelope. Okay, so you can see I've stuck that on there, and then when we fold that card down, hopefully you can see that that will go flat against the inside of the card, and it doesn't stick out over the edge. So just be aware when you're doing that. And then we're going to come in with these other two. Okay, now if I was to put those like that, I would need to crease them across there so that when the card folds, can you see? That would need to fold down as well, which is something that we can do, and that is something that I am going to do. Okay, so I'm just going to bring my trimmer back. Now what I've done is I've offered it up against those other flowers, and I've just used my fingers to make the crease there. And I think that will be enough, and I won't need my trimmer. So, because I think once we fold the card up, that will work. So I'm just going to turn that over now. I'm going to put glue on the bottom. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. I'm going to put glue on the bottom because I want that to stick to the inside of the card. But I'm leaving the top for the minute. Okay, so I want that at the bottom of that bouquet. Remember again to be careful not to have it sticking over the top of the V. I'm just going to press that down there. Okay, and then when we fold it, oh, it's popped back the wrong way. Don't want it to do that, do we? When we fold it, those flowers will go down with it. So once you've stuck them on, just give them a little press, okay? And then what I'll do is I know I've got that bottom in the right place now, so I'll just go in and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the back of the top of the card there, and I'm going to fold it shut again, okay? And then press that down so that when it opens, that is stuck there. So I've just got a tiny little bit of glue. Oh, actually, no, that isn't going to work. Don't stick it down, because otherwise it won't, well, it might go down. We'll work out when it's dry. Okay, and then I've got this purple one here as well, which I just want to bring in sort of beside that one there. So again, I'm just going to offer it up, make sure it's clear of the seam here. I'm going to offer it up and use my fingers to make that crease. And then I will just add some glue to the bottom this time. I think that's probably the safest bet. You'll have to excuse me. This was an idea that was in my head, and I'm sort of creating part of it on the hoof, if you like. So I'm just going to stick that over there. I'm going to make sure that that is in the right place so that when we fold the card, it goes down flat. And I'm just going to give it a good press down. Okay, there we go. So there's our pop-up element of our card there. Now, ordinarily, I would put a card layer in here as well, and you could do that if you wanted to, but you'd have to do that before you stuck these flowers on. But I haven't done that because I really like this colour, and I wanted the contrast between the flowers and this colour, whereas if I'd stuck it on white, this pink flower might sort of disappear. I know we put some white here, but that's because we want the flowers to show, and the piece of white there is obviously to balance the card out. So that's the main part of the card. And now what we need to do is we need a sentiment. So within that sentiment, to marry up with the just want to say, we've got lots of options. We've got I miss you, happy birthday, congratulations, good luck, sorry, thank you, best wishes, you are lovely, and I'm thinking of you. So you can see that this set will come in handy for lots and lots of different occasions. So I think I'm probably, if I can find what I've done with the stamps, where did I put them? I'm probably going to use the You Are Lovely. Oh my word, where have they disappeared to? Well, maybe I'm not, because I can't actually find the stamps. Did I put them back in the box? No, they're not in the box. Oh well, I won't be using that then, will I? So, luckily, I pulled out, Plan B, pulled out the Well Said stamp set. And there is actually a Mother's Day sentiment in there. It's Happy St. Mother's Day is more like it, but I don't think that goes with the just want to say. But I'm going to use You Mean the World to Me. Okay, so I'm just going to try and find that. These are rubber. Okay, You Mean the Word to Me is one single line. Is it that one? No, that's So Happy You're Here. There we go. You mean the world to me. Okay. I'm counting myself exceedingly lucky to be sending a Mother's Day card to my mum this year, because 2 years ago she was diagnosed with cancer, and we didn't really, to be truthful, expect her to get through Christmas. She's made it through Christmas, and she has seen her first and only great-grandchild celebrate her first birthday this week, and she is still going strong. So I am absolutely beyond blessed to have her still here, and she does mean the world to me. So that is the sentiment that I'm going to use. But I think what I'm going to do is grab a die cut shape to put that on inside the card down here. Okay, this just happens to be a spare one that I had. It's got a little mark on it, so I'm just going to go over it with my Tombow rubber. If I cut extra of these sort of shapes, I always keep them in with the colour that I've cut them out of. So I'm going to go in with the You Mean the World to Me. Oh, and I've messed it up. Okay, so I'll tell you what we're going to do now. This is an exercise in how to recover your cards when you mess them up like I've just done. So I'm going to bring in a piece of purple posy cardstock. I'm going to stamp it on there. Best laid plans and all that. Sometimes these things come out nicer than you actually envisaged them when you've made a mistake. Okay, I'm just looking for a thin punch in order to punch that out. Just wondering if this will work. This is a small retired oval. No, that's not going to work. We need a long punch. Okay, I'll cut that down myself. Where did it go? Oh my lord, we are having a day of it today, aren't we? Right, here it is. Okay, so that's going to go in there. Oh, I never get rid of my punches. I'm just bringing in my retired word window, but that isn't going to fit either. Okay, so we are going to have to cut it down manually. So I'm just going to take off that end and that end. And I'm going to bring in a large pair of scissors so I can get this in one trim. I'm just going to cut this down so it's not a lot bigger than the greeting. I'll put a little bit of glue on the back of that. Okay. And then we're going to pop that over where I messed it up. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in a blending brush, just because that's quite white, I feel, against that. I'm going to bring in a blending brush and grab our grab our Blushing Bride ink. So we've got a good combination of colours. Oh, I forgot I used this brush. I don't know if you can see that, if the camera will pick it up. Can you see the little gold flecks on there? I've just remembered I used this for a gilding video. Okay, and I'm just going to bring my brush in and add some. So I've now got little gold flecks on my Blushing Bride ink pad. Okay, I'm going to bring in some Blushing Bride ink and just give that a little bit of colour. Okay, and that is going to go on there like that. So we'll just add some glue to the back of that. Okay, that's going to go in like that. Okay, and there's our card. So we've got Just Want to Say on our One Sheet Wonder background and our oval, and just remember I used a little tiny piece of dimensional to prop that W up on the word want, because these were raised, and then when we open our card we get our little bouquet of flowers and we've got our little sentiment there. Obviously you can use whatever sentiment you wanted to correspond with whoever you're going to send the card to. You might not want to send it as a Mother's Day card. You might want to send it as a birthday card. Okay, and I just forgot to glue that purple flower down, so we just popped a little bit of glue on the back of that just to glue that down to our pop-up. So there we go, a little bit of crafting on the hoof. The idea was in my head, it just didn't really work how I had intended to initially do it, but you can see you can pull it back and make something out of that. Just to finish that off, I'm just going to grab these lovely pearls. They're part of the Hydrangea Haven stamp set, or suite, I should say. Oops, that's going to keep coming off there, isn't it? And what I'm going to do, there are 4 colours. So you've got the Gorgeous Grape, some Highland Heather. I think that's probably either Blushing Bride or another pale pink. I can't remember which. Anyway, they're really pretty. So I'm just going to add a couple. I'm going to add one there. And then I think we'll go for a couple of the darker ones on the front. Because when you write just want to say, and then you normally put ... don't you? So that will, so we've got our just want to say ... you mean the world to me, and our bouquet. So I'm hoping my mum will like that for her Mother's Day card. But no danger of her watching it on YouTube, so we're good. Okay, that's all from me for today. Thanks for putting up with my clumsiness and my winging it, basically, as we go. Hope you like the card, and I hope you'll give that pop-up fold technique a go. As I said, that's all from me for today, so I'll see you again soon. Happy stamping!